Hello everyone and welcome to the final episode of Mate Nason's top 100 games of all time that I love to play. We finally hit it. We are at 10 to 1, counting them down, the top 10. So let's not waste any time and get right to it. Our first game is my favorite hidden movement game. Other games such as Fury of Dracula and Spectre Ops have already appeared on the list, but this is my favorite one, and that is Hunt for the Ring. What I love about Hunt for the Ring is how I enjoy to play it. You can play it one versus many, with one player playing Frodo and his fellowship companions trying to make his way from Hobbiton all the way to Rivendell, while other players can play the Nazgul and the Ringwraiths trying to find him. However, I think this game shines at 2 players. It is not too complicated for one person to play the Ringwraiths. It works quite well, and so you get this very personal, intense competition between the two of the Frodo player trying to race across that board as fast as they can, while the other players trying to set up traps, trying to find out where they are. It's got a very interesting mechanic of searching by grids. So it is easy for Frodo, well, not easy, but it's very possible for Frodo to double back and kind of give some false positives or false negatives on where he is actually hiding. It's got an interesting dice mechanic where the Nazgul player is rolling dice for their actions. It's also a 2-part game, which I like, where one part is getting to Bree, where the Frodo player plays like a traditional hidden movement game of writing down where they're going. But the second part of the board, where you're playing from Bree to Rivendell, the Frodo player picks a card that dictates his movements. And instead of actually controlling Frodo, the player instead controls Gandalf, which tries to fight the Nazgul. So you get a little bit of this combatish type of aspect to the game, where Gandalf can push the Ringwraiths away. Gandalf can give false positives to trip up the Ringwraith player. So both parts of this game are fascinating. And last but not least, the game is a prelude to War of the Ring, another game that's already popped up on my top 100. And you can play this game first, and whoever wins this game gets some bonuses to set up for the War of the Ring, which I think is really neat. So that's Hunt for the Ring, my number 10. Came out in 2017, currently ranked in the 1700s on Board Game Geek. Moving on, my number 9 game is Scythe, right there. Scythe is a wonderful board game that just mixes so many great mechanics together in one streamlined experience that just works. It's got action selection, where it's your own player board. Asymmetrical abilities to an extent, not overpowered, not overcomplicated, but you feel the asymmetrical abilities of the factions. It's got, with the action selection, you can upgrade your board. So it's got this engine building mechanic where you're chaining together actions, you're upgrading your actions. It's got a little bit of exploration, how you're sending your leader out throughout the board to uncover tokens, where you get to draw some story element cards to make some choices. Very simple choices, but they give you some resources or help or hurt you in different ways. It's a resource gathering and farming game. So it just takes all of these very good traditional board game mechanics and puts it together in a beautiful package with beautiful art, good gameplay, solid gameplay, to just make a very good gaming experience. So it's just a great game. My number 9. Scythe is currently ranked number 14 on Board Game Geek. Came out in 2016. My number 8 is the original deck building game, and that is Dominion. I come from a background where Magic the Gathering was one of the first probably the first hobby game I ever played. I got really into it. I loved the concept of deck building. I loved looking for combos in those cards. And what Dominion does is it takes that experience and it packages it very nicely into one game experience. Dominion, very simple. You lay out 10 different cards in front of you. They're different actions, and you are buying those cards with money from your hand, your starter deck, in order to get better actions in your hand so that you can draw more cards, get more money to buy even more cards, and you're building this engine in your deck until you can finally start buying victory cards. And once some conditions are met, the game's over, and whoever has as many victory cards wins. Very simple. I like how a lot of these games in my top 10 take a lot of content from board games, concepts from board games, and just distill it down to its essence. And that is what I love, just a good experience. And Dominion gives you that experience of deck building, competitive feeling, racing, all in that package. Not to mention the many expansions the game offers means no game is going to be like the other. Very unique. That is my number 8, Dominion. Came out in 2008, currently ranked number 98 on BoardGameGeek.com. My number 7 is another deck building stylish game, but what I love about this game is how it mixes crafting and upgrades into deck building, and that is Edge of Darkness. This is a John D. Clare game. He's famous for Mystic Vale, which was the first game of his that uses this system. And Edge of Darkness is a card crafting game. So, like Dominion, where you will be deck building to an extent, what you're really doing is upgrading your cards to gain more actions to these cards when you play them. That is the central mechanic of this game. And I love that. The way you can slide together 3 different actions or abilities to make one super card that does all 3 of these things gives you so many more choices, opens up so much more strategic variety. The game system is just solid. The theme is great too. Edge of Darkness is a game where you're playing as a cabal or a faction in this town, and you are attempting to recruit people and gain influence. There's a slight worker placement aspect to it. And as you're buying these cards, recruiting these actions to the cards that are loyal to you, you are trying to then defend the city. You're going out and hunting monsters, which is fun. You are gaining loyalty points, which gives you points towards the end of the game. You're doing that worker placement aspect, as I said, where you're doing further actions to gain more workers, send them out to gain more money so you can upgrade your cards. All of these things. There is a very interesting combat mechanic in this where when the darkness is attacking you, you drop some cubes in a tower and see whom they attack and what cards will attack who. And so you need to be defending yourself against these attacks by either building up defenses or fighting offensively to kill these monsters before they can get to you. So there's this tension in that as well. So John D. Clare did a great job of putting together deck building, putting together engine building with this crafting mechanic, weaving together a theme with beautiful art and story behind it, a fun combat system that's very simple to do, just comparing numbers, and then a fun threat mechanic that keeps the tension going with this tower. So excellent marks to John for that. That's Edge of Darkness, just came out in 2019, currently ranked in the 1000s on Board Game Geek. My number 7. Moving on to my number 6 game, we have Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven came out in 2017 and is currently ranked number 1 on Board Game Geek. Gloomhaven is an epic adventure, and it's an epic adventure in a box. It gives you the ability to role play a little bit. It gives you the ability to go on a campaign, feel this tension. It gives you the feeling that your choices matter as you're playing through this game. You are asked to make decisions that do impact the game. They have taken, the designers of this game, they have taken the wide open world of a role-playing experience and campaign, and they have found a way to distill it down, to give you that feeling in a box with a clear start and a clear end and clear rules to get from point A to point B. That is an achievement, and that is probably why Gloomhaven is the number 1 game. What I love about the game, besides those things I already mentioned, is the game mechanics itself are just solid. At its heart, Gloomhaven, as far as the mechanics go, is a skirmish game where you are fighting monsters together. And you do this through a very clever card management deck game where you play 2 cards that each have 2 actions on them. And you pick 1 action from 1 card and 1 action from a second card, and then you choose those and do those. The game is co-op, and what I like about the game as well is that you can't have an alpha game player. Other co-op dungeon crawling games, I'm thinking of like Descent, have the ability to min-max a lot, have the ability for one player to kind of quarterback a little bit, who can say, this is exactly what we need to do, and I know what everyone's actions could be, so this is how the game should play. You can't do that in Gloomhaven because everyone has their own deck of actions. Maybe they haven't drawn a certain card. Maybe they don't have the actions available for them to do what needs to be done. You have to pick these actions in secret is part of the rule of the game. So you have a lot of player autonomy and agency, which I love. So Gloomhaven's a great skirmish game, which is fun, but more so it's an epic adventure where you feel like you are in this world, you feel like you're this character, you are allowed to make choices and decisions that impact the game. You put all that together and what you get is the #1 game on Board Game Geek, my number 6, Gloomhaven. My number 5 game came out in 2005. It's ranked number 10 on Board Game Geek, and it is Twilight Struggle. For a long time, Twilight Struggle was my favorite 2-player game because I love the theme. It's a Cold War theme, Russia versus the United States. I love the central mechanic of this game, which is a hand management game. It's a card playing game where you draw cards and you have to just make the best of what you've drawn. You don't have your own deck. Both players are drawing from a central deck. So cards that you might want or might think you can get, maybe your opponent drew it. So you can't always plan perfectly for what you're gonna get. So it's not a deck building game. It's more of a game of mitigating problems is what it is. And why that game is like that is because a lot of cards that you're gonna play might help your opponent. About half of the cards you're gonna play are gonna help your opponent. And so you are forced to make tough decisions of how should I help my opponent? How am I going to counteract the good I just did for them? Great decision making in this game because of that. The concept of the game is pretty simple. You're basically trying to put your American influence in certain countries, and if you're Russia, you're trying to put your Russian influence in certain countries, and then at certain points in the game when cards are played, you score these regions to see who has control. So it's an area control game at the heart of the board, but the strategy of the game comes in the card play and mitigating those problems that the game throws at you and how do you solve those problems. I love it. Twilight Struggle, my number 5. My number 4 is currently ranked number 24 on Board Game Geek. It came out in 2018, and that is Nemesis. Nemesis is a story in a box. I said Gloomhaven was an epic campaign story adventure. Nemesis is a one-shot movie. You really feel that you are in this sci-fi horror adventure. In Nemesis, you play as a crew member who is woken up on this ship. You have hibernation sickness, so you don't quite remember exactly where things are on the ship, so you need to explore it a little bit. And you find out that why you were woken up is because there are alien intruders on the ship. And once you find these aliens, the twist of Nemesis comes in, is you have 2 objectives in front of you. One is your personal objective, and one is a company or corporate objective. And when the aliens are discovered, you must decide which objective are you going to try to do to win the game. Some of the objectives are very evil and malicious that might ask you to blow up the ship or kill another crew member. Some of them are kind of benign, like, just make sure the ship makes it to Earth safely, or bring back an egg specimen. So you have to choose which one of these you're gonna do. And so the game it's semi-co-op, but kind of light on the co-op. There are many times the objectives will not overlap, but they won't hurt each other. If you want to keep the ship alive and I just want to bring back an egg, we share that common goal. And because the objectives are secret, you can tell someone that your objective is one thing when it's really something different. The theme of this game, though, is what shines. The game mechanics are fine, the objectives are fine, the card play is very simple. You're just discarding cards to move and shoot and pick up, and it's not complicated. But why the game is good is because the theme comes out. You feel like you should be role-playing these characters. You feel like when you pick that objective that you need to immerse yourself in that character and why they're doing that. I've never played a board game that really made me feel that way. Not even Gloomhaven. Nemesis for me is the most thematic game I've ever played as far as that goes. I feel transported into this world of this alien spaceship, or the spaceship with aliens attacking it. And because of that, it doesn't matter to me whether you win or lose, whether you die, it doesn't matter what happens. It's a joy to see it unfold because every game is such a unique story to watch. That is Nemesis, my number 4. Moving on to my number 3, we have a game by Cole Worley, who's of course famous for Root, and he has a new game, Oath, coming out, and this is Pax Premier. Pax Premier 2nd edition just came out in 2019. The first edition came out like about 4 years earlier. It is ranked number 78 on Board Game Geek, but it's my number 3. This is a tableau building game with a small area control aspect to it, but what it really is a game of shifting alliances and kind of knowing what side to be on. So the game takes place in the 1800s. In Afghanistan, and there are 3 powers vying for control: Russia, England, and the Afghans. And this game is based off of what was called the Great Game at that time, which are real historical events. And so you are playing as a player, aligning yourself with one of those 3 factions. Everybody could be on the same side, everybody could be on different sides. It doesn't really matter from that regard, because the point of the game is at some time you are going to check to see if one of those factions have established dominance. And if they have, you're going to get points based on how loyal you are to that faction. So if everyone works together, then the game becomes who can be the most loyal to this faction. You do that by playing cards that are loyal to that faction. If everyone is working against each other, then it becomes a very tight area control game of actually fighting each other on this map to try to make one faction be more dominant. And what is beautiful about this game is that can change throughout the game many times, because you can change sides easily, very easily. And so you are shifting these alliances to try to be like, okay, I can get some more points if I jump over here, or I don't want that person to be all by themselves, so I'm gonna join them. Or you could say, no, I don't wanna join them, I'm just gonna double down in my group and I'm gonna try to blow them off the map. So there are so many strategies open in this game. Like I said, it's a tableau builder, so you're basically buying cards and adding them to your tableau, and these cards give you actions, which are very simple actions of building tribes or armies or roads on the map, but those cards of course give you loyalty to those different factions, and just the intrigue in this game is beautiful and I love it. It's my favorite Cole Worley game. I'm excited to try his new game Oath, but Pax Premier 2nd edition, my number 3. My number 2 game of all time that I love to play is a game by Corey Koniska. Corey, of course, is famous for, he worked on Twilight Imperium 3rd edition, Forbidden Stars, which have also popped up on my list. And this is Star Wars Rebellion. This is a 2-player asymmetrical game where you are acting out the story of Star Wars. One player plays as the Rebellion, and what you are trying to do is score some objective points to get the game over faster. If the game ends, you win, and every objective you're scoring takes a round off the game. So you are trying to do these little mini missions. And then on the other side, you have the Empire. And the Empire has vast resources. They're able to build huge fleets. And their only goal is to find you and eliminate you. And if they can find where your hidden base is on this map of 20, 30, 40 planets, I don't know, it's a big map. And if they can find you and blow up all your troops there before the end of the game, they win. This game is tense. If you are the Rebellion player, you will spend the entire game thinking, oh my God, the Empire is right next to me. They're coming right for me. They're one turn away from finding me. There's no way I'm going to be able to shave off enough rounds. If you're playing the Empire, you will spend the whole game going, this map is too big. There's no way I'm going to find them. There are too many places to search. And so this pressure and this tension is just palpable in this game. The actions of this game are fun too. They're very thematic of Star Wars. You feel like you're in the story. You can send Luke out to find Yoda. You can send Darth Vader out to capture Han Solo. You can interrogate prisoners as the Empire. As the Rebellion, you can sway planets to join you, to give you their resources so you can start building up. You're sending out your leaders. You're doing little mission cards on your action cards that you're drawing. So the game feels like Star Wars. It's also just a very great, I wouldn't say cat and mouse game because it's not hidden movement, but it's a very good tense game of searching, of hide and seek. Star Wars Rebellion, currently ranked number 9 on Board Game Geek. My number 2. That finally brings us to my number 1 game of all time. And that is Twilight Imperium, 4th edition. Got it right up there on the top of my shelf. Twilight Imperium, the 1st edition came out in 1997, and the most recent edition, the 4th edition, came out in 2017. It's currently ranked number 5 on BoardGameGeek.com. I love this game. All the things I've been talking about in this list about what I like about board games, for the most part, Twilight Imperium has it all in it. There is a great story to this game. The lore is rich and fascinating. It is an epic space opera is what a lot of people call it. It is just epic in scope, size, in everything that it does. You have 24 different factions that you can play, all with asymmetrical powers. So you can really get into the faction, the character of whom you are. The game itself is very immersive. You are rebuilding your faction, your empire. You are exploring out in this galaxy, trying to conquer new worlds to build yourself up. You are moving yourself towards the center of the galaxy to try to reclaim the ancestral throne of the empire. You are trying to get these victory points by proving yourself worthy by completing public objectives to show that you are managing the best faction, the best empire that should be given the throne and the title. So the thematic elements are there. The gameplay elements are amazing as well. There are so many game mechanics that are woven together well in this game. Of course, it's a combat game. You are moving ships, building ships, fighting for control. That's done well. It's simple with very simple dice rolling to see who wins. It is almost like a civilization building game too. You're upgrading your ships, you're upgrading your faction's technology. As you're growing your faction, you feel more strong, you feel like you've accomplished things, just like in a Civ builder game. There's exploration as you're landing on planets to see what cool things you find that might help you, what abilities you might gain that can give you a leg up. The game has negotiation. The game has alliances. All in the sense of working together until your benefits don't help each other anymore, until helping that person is going to help them too much and hurt you. So you can mutually work together as long as it's in your beneficial interests of both parties. And you'll need to do that. You can't be at war all the time. Even though there's a combat element to this game, you can't survive if you're always fighting. So the heart of the game as well is that negotiation tactic. How are you going to work with these people to advance your own interests, and then take advantage of those situations to win when you need to? That's beautifully done in the game. The ability to draft cards to get special powers is in the game. I love drafting games. There are strategy cards that you pick each round that not only determine your turn order, so there's strategic reasons of why you might take certain cards, but each card gives you certain abilities that might help your faction to upgrade themselves, might help your faction move towards an objective that's been revealed to score you points to win the game. So that's in there as well. There's also a politics phase in the game, where as you're playing through the game, additional rules will be added to the game via laws that you vote on. So sometimes you're forced to help other players or hurt other players when these laws come out that you need to decide as a group how you're going to handle this situation. So the game does a wonderful job of, it's competitive, but you have to work together. But at some point in time, someone's got to, betray is too strong of a word, but someone's got to then take advantage of that working together and twist it so that they come out on top. And whoever can do that the most, get the better part of the deals most of the time, is going to win. Better part of the agendas and the laws, better part of the drafting, better part of the trade negotiations. All of those things, if you can be a craftier, more cunning, more strategic player, you will win more often than not. And that's what all board games should be. The board games should award players who can do those things. And Twilight Imperium takes all of that together, and it does it in an epic scope that takes you darn near all day to play, but you're spending time with your friends and you're having a story unfold. And that's what makes games great. That's why I love board games. That's why I love Twilight Imperium, which I think is the creme de la creme of board games. So that is it. That is my list. That are my top 10 games of all time that I love to play. We have counted down my top 100 games now that I love to play. Go ahead and leave me a like and subscribe. Let me know if you enjoyed this list. Let me know what games you agree with or don't agree with. I'm looking forward to hearing feedback from everyone in the community. So take care, and until next time, have a good one.